I remember the first time like I plugged it into the piano. I'm like, oh, that actually sounds like the songs rather than just like.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Adam Goren was born in the Bronx on January 14th, 1975, but grew up in Oreland, Pennsylvania. Oreland. Yeah. He played in several local bands as a youth. While Goren was still in school, a friend introduced him to music sequencers, and he began writing music with one in his spare time. In 91, Goren joined forces with the band Fracture, and he remained with them until 95. Later, he started performing shows as Adam and His Package, consisting of himself, a BC Rich guitar, and his QY700 music sequencer. In 97, he released his album named The First CD on Bloodlink Records. He released several more albums and EPs and has performed on several compilations and self-released EPs while touring internationally. So Adam used to come and play a lot of shows in New Jersey, and he would just show up and it was just this dude with glasses and a baseball cap and this sound machine thing that he would plug into a PA, and he'd play these like very poppy, electric-y, funky, I don't know, like funky, but just fun sounding songs. And the crowd just loved it. And obviously he stood out because everyone else was playing with like a full band and playing either like hardcore or punk, and this guy just completely stood out, and it was just awesome. And when I talked to Chris Gethard in episode 66, he had connected to Adam because Adam was on Chris's show and played a set. And so I reached out to Chris. I was like, yo, dude, I am having a hard time getting Adam's information. I don't know where he is online, or I was just looking in the wrong spots. Do you have his contact info? And he wrote back. He's like, here's his email. Go for it. So I reached out to him and I was like, dude, I need to get you on the show. And he said, thanks so much for having me in mind. I'd be happy to chat. And I just want to preface that Adam is like the nicest dude. He's so friendly, and you're gonna love it. He's just like the friendliest guy. I got him on the phone, and this is what we talked about. His amazing website that still exists to this day. Chris Gethard, buying shitty albums, the band Fracture, how he found his package, playing on the Chris Gethard show, playing Fest, who did his artwork, the hate mail he got, and a ton more. At the end of the interview, he gives a shout out to a band he thinks everyone should check out, but I figured I would just say it now just in case no one gets to the end. But they're called Future of the Left, so go YouTube them or Google them, whatever, and go check them out because he said he doesn't understand why they haven't ruled the universe yet. So there you go. So go search for them and give them a listen. Again, this week, I'm going to keep this really short. If you want to support the podcast, you can go to thiswasthescene.com and you can donate or become a Patreon. A Patreon's $1 a month or whatever you want to spend. If you want to spend more than $1 a month, you can do that, or you could donate one time. Or if you want to help, you can buy merch. And if the merch is shitty, just let me know because I'd rather create things that people actually want to buy. So you can let me know at thiswasthescene@gmail.com, and that's it. Two other things. If you want to go follow my webcomic, just go to Your Daily Bread, BRED, on Instagram. You can follow. I do a daily comic, and I also have books and merch and mugs and all this stuff. You can go do that. Or if you're a marketing company, or if you have work for a company that's a hard time explaining what they do, check out drive80.com. It's where I create animations. It's the freelance thing I do full time. That's how I actually make a living when I can actually get clients. So take a minute to go check that out. That'd be great if you just keep me in mind for any projects. That's it. Said I would keep it short. So feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. I kind of have a feeling that you're not going to have any stories that are going to like rip people apart, or
No, I don't think so.
you don't seem like that kind of guy who's like, I'm gonna vent right now. I'm gonna let out 2 decades of anger.
My memory is probably terrible too, so I probably don't remember anything bad.
You will remember probably a good amount, which I promise. I'm surprised to see that you still have your website up.
Uh, yes, I would not say it is a high maintenance thing, as you may notice. It has not been touched for quite some time. But yeah, I just kind of figure why not? Just because I have it up and it's easy to sort of just have sit there.
Well, what I'm really bummed about is that your website counter is broken it's because you have on this site. So everyone listening, if you go to adamandhispackage.com, Adam, ATOM, obviously the true fans will know to spell that correctly. In the front of it, it's just this weird picture that you scroll over. It's just an image that flips to another one with like, I don't know, just images like red and green on the face. But it says at the bottom, you are number, and it would have the number on the list of my favorite people. I think that's hilarious.
Oh,
And
well, thank you, Mike. That is a joke that is now over a decade old that I made.
I
So
think it's great. I think if I saw that, that would introduce me to be like, I'm going to enjoy this website.
that is very generous.
Yeah, I mean, you put this up a decade ago?
Oh no, I'm
Oh, I
more
was
than
like,
a decade.
Jesus Christ, dude. This is like GeoCities.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it is genuine. There's no irony in that at all. It is pure incompetence and my
It's
learning HTML and
yeah,
very poorly. But
it's DIY like to the extreme.
that too is a nice euphemism.
I mean, like even the shows page, does that, I know I'm gonna go back to the beginning, but does this have like your first show? Because it says 1997 all the way up to it ends. I don't know what the date is, but it's like a whole just list.
Great. Yeah, it's not all of the shows because I didn't really intend for it to even be a band or anything. So I think not until I was like, oh, I'm playing shows, it was probably maybe a year in that I actually was like, oh, I should keep track of these.
Were you like an HTML? I mean, did you have, obviously you had an understanding, or did you have an understanding of how to do a website before you did yours, or did you just learn because you were like, I think I need to have a website?
I learned to make the website. I had some friends of friends who actually know HTML rather than actually know how to just copy and paste. So I think that one of them, this friend of a friend gave me like a brief lesson. She kind of showed me kind of some of the nuts and bolts, but it is not good. Just so that is clear. That
I think it's great. I mean, it is a true representation of what it was for us to just figure stuff out on our own and put it up. But I think like the style of your sound and the website. I mean, not saying I'm not saying this to say like your music was crap and your website's crap. This is not what I'm saying at all, because that's what you're saying. You're like, it's not great. I think the simpleness of the site, but you have like your own touch of just like funniness in it, and like I feel like your style is just on. It's like I feel like this is what encompassed what your sound was visually back then.
oh well, thank you.
Yeah,
That's nice. I think that fits.
yeah, I think it totally. I think you and Anthony. Did you ever meet Anthony Annoyance
Oh
magazine
my
in
gosh,
19?
Anthony Shore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I have not talked or seen him talk to, or I knew there was some preposition there, or seen Anthony in thousands of years, but yeah, I actually felt like I knew him quite well. He went to college with a woman that I'd been seeing for a while, and actually, he was a super sweetheart.
Yeah, I interviewed him, and I just feel like you guys have a similar personality. Like
Yeah,
just
he is. Well, thank
super
you.
fucking nice guys, but like just because he has a website up about root beer.
I believe that.
So if,
I remember reading the zine, I think back in the day, and there were frequently love letters about root beer and stuff
well, it's
like
like
that.
root beer and wombats, like draw a wombat.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
We'll jump to this in a second, but I have a web, like a daily web comic that I do on Instagram, and I made a book. It's a sketchbook because I felt that it's like once you read a comic, it's just like mini comics in a book. You put it down after, a 10-minute, like just, when say read, I guess you are kind of reading, but just brush through. But I was like, let me give it back to people and have them draw things. So I even took the wombat thing and put it on because each page gives you a prompt. And
Uh-huh.
I put draw a wombat in the book, and it's been funny seeing what people because I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, like seeing what they're drawing as a wombat. It's like the same thing that we all did in the zine. Like everyone's like, "What
Yeah.
the fuck?"
Oh, that's great.
So where are you living now? Are you in? Have you? Someone said you are from Pennsylvania.
I am. I live a whole 3.5 minutes from where I grew up. I've
Okay.
made it very far in the world, and I live just outside of Philadelphia.
my family lives right outside of there.
Where do they live?
Oh, God damn it. Why can't I think of the name?
Oh, you are a
I
terrible
am a piece of
relative.
crap. Malvern. Malvern.
Malvern. Oh yeah, that's not. I don't live quite that far out. That's like a good 35 minutes west of Philadelphia. I live like a few minutes to the northwest of Philadelphia.
For some reason, I always thought you were from Florida. That's why I was always impressed when I'd see you at Jersey shows. I'm like, this fucking guy's driving from Florida.
Yeah, no.
Right outside
Yep,
Philly.
this is home.
So I don't know if you got a chance to listen to any episodes, but the whole structure of this is talking about the late 90s and early 2000s. It started as the Jersey scene, and then I did about 29 episodes, and I took a break, and I came back in episode 30, and I was like, you know what I want to do is talk about the bands that influenced us or that we saw that came in from outside of Jersey, where we were going, man, we can make something of this. You've come up a bunch of times because we'd see you there in shows in Jersey and play with you, and where you were one of the people that I've talked to many people where I was like, there was influences in us as a band because I was in a band called Lanemeyer, and what I wanted to do was tour. And so when you came through, I'm like, man, like this guy is like
This
on
guy's
the
driving
road.
from Florida.
This guy's coming from Florida
every weekend. What an idiot!
Damn, that drive must suck every single Friday. That's too funny looking back on that. But yeah, but you used to come in, but you had a whole different, and I know, I mean, everyone listening to this podcast, they know all the bands we're talking about. I don't think I really have new fans who are like, let me just dive into this and see what this is about. But you would come through, and it was just you and your package with music, and I always thought it was great. So I want to talk about the late 90s scene leading 2000, what led you, what got you into music, what led that to punk rock, what led that to you starting to play music, with recording it, touring, where that led you, and any crazy or just fun stories along the way. And that's pretty much the whole structure of it. And
Awesome.
yeah, and I actually got, everyone listening, I got Adam's information from Chris Gethard because Adam was on his show, and you played when he had is it the newer show or the old one that he had that got canceled?
I am a little bit oblivious, and definitely during the school year. I'm even more oblivious to much of what happens outside of the world, except for outside in the world, outside of the
Classroom.
disaster that our nation has found itself in politically. But I don't know. Does he have a new show?
I know he has his podcast, the
Right.
Beautiful
Sure.
Anonymous.
Anonymous. Yep.
And I didn't even know who he was. I did an interview with him. Did you get a chance to listen to it?
I have not. I totally intend on checking it out.
He grew up in the scene, in the Jersey scene, and
Yeah.
he has this really crazy story, and I won't ruin it, but it's amazing. And when I was talking to him, and he said, "Yeah, I have this. I had a show. I think it was canceled. And he has a new one that he's going to start that's back on public access. But he had this show, and he had you on it, and you played. And so I reached out to him. I was like, dude, do you have his fucking email? Because I've been trying for a really long time to connect with you or find your information. So he had it, which was so random.
I didn't know that I didn't.
You're a commodity, man.
Oh, very.
You're a hot topic.
Very much a recluse.
But yeah, so I'll start this off, and I'll let you talk way more than me. And so let's go back to when you were a kid in your younger days, and what song or music video triggered you in that aha moment of, oh my God, I love music?
So I will do my best to try and remember things. I don't know how successful I will be, but I will try. Music, I mean, aside from family, and I've been totally lucky to have the same group of really close friends that I had made in elementary school. So my closest friends to this day are folks that I really grew up with and played music. And I feel incredibly fortunate because we all sort of ended up kind of similar to the scene you're documenting. I think that we had a similar type of thing, that there was a good group of us that would be in bands that would break up, and kind of like shuffle members and then end up forming new bands and stuff like that. And I feel like music, my friends and my family have been things that have been completely consistent throughout my life. That like I used to be way into baseball statistics. Now I don't care at all about that. Like I used to be into, X, Y, or Z, but I think that the thing that has maintained, and I honestly can't picture myself not being in love with music. So it's kind of hard for me to remember like what one thing it was. I remember like as a, second or third grade, like when I got my first, like, stereo sounds like it's pretty generous probably to describe this, but like the first thing where I could listen to stuff that I chose in my room, was pretty awesome for me. I mean, at that time it was like, the early to mid 80s. So like, I'm a sucker for 80s pop, and there was some great stuff on the radio, and it was great. So like,
was there like a specific band that you heard one time? Because some people have said Guns N' Roses or Motley Crue, or I think I've joked around saying Tone Loc. Like, was there like something on where you're like, ooh, what is this? What's this 80s band that I just love right now?
So I think like then, they were just like kind of hits.
Oh yeah.
And my parents also played the Beatles for me, and that continues to be something that still is just like, wow, I can't believe these human beings did this in like 7 years. But I would say like the kind of thing that maybe led me down the path of punk rock, like of my across the street neighbor, was a friend of mine. His older brother, who was maybe like 3 years older than I was, like had made this punk mixtape, and it was effectively like the First Class record, maybe some Sex Pistols songs, like sort of like mixed in there somewhere, and that was basically it. Although I remember thinking like, whoa, how would anyone put together these, this sequence of songs?
Yeah.
But I remember hearing like the First Class record, and that really moving me to a degree. I think the electric guitar was just like, oh my God, I love that sound. There's something about that. And I think that was probably a big changer for me. And I'm trying to think, but as I was little, it's probably like just that collection of like 80s pop, radio at that time.
Well, that's like what we had. That was what was in our face.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like that was just what was served to us, so we had to be like, oh, I guess this is what music is.
Yeah, but at the same time, like we were fortunate enough, I'm not sure how old you are, but how long?
I'm 40.
Oh wait, what did I say? How long?
How long have you been on this planet?
How long? Yes, I would like it in minutes, please. So I'm 44, so like I think that we're really lucky that you're right. Like there was a bunch that's just the stuff that and especially, then before the internet, like you're kind of a captive audience if you're interested in that stuff. Oh wait, you know what? I remember the first record I bought, and it was the Jay Giles band, Freeze Frame.
Okay.
And I remember buying that record and playing the hell out of it. And I think that was probably like the first record I bought voluntarily that was made it so I could listen to things that I wanted to listen to. So I was much younger. I was probably in, I don't know, whatever that came out.
You had a job when you were like 10 and just bought Jay Giles band?
I was a doctor. I was an imposter doctor. I am lying.
Doogie
no, I think I was just spoiled and maybe whined a lot, maybe.
Were you an only child?
Nope. I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I'm trying to
I do remember the three of us, like, and this was also sort of like the dawn of MTV, which was totally, and I think that like probably each, and this sounds really corny, but like I think each, song that I loved or each band or record that I loved, all along the way kind of, builds like in all, like how much what you like and what you're sort of like developing your sense of taste, especially as a kid. It's really, really, those are formative years for that kind of thing. So I don't know if it was just like one particular thing, but I think like, hearing Devo for the first time and, like I said, like hearing The Clash, the first record, is all of that stuff kind of like, kind of gives you little touchstones to kind of put together what you like.
Was there kind of a rebellious thing embedded in you at all as a young kid? Because I feel like anything that led people to punk rock was kind of a, yeah, like I don't know what they're talking about, but they seem like they're mad and they're rebelling against something. Is there like, did you have that kind of instance? I'm just gonna guess that you didn't because you seem like a very happy person, but like maybe you did. Like maybe
I
you're
think
like, yeah, I was kind of pissed off because my older brother got all the real good Jay Giles band record. The other one.
I think Freeze Frame is probably the good Jay Giles band. But Love Stinks has no anchovies on
Oh my God.
please on it, so I don't know. So I think that probably in some relative way, maybe relative to folks in my family, maybe I was like angsty and rebellious, but I think that I tend to be a scaredy cat of getting in trouble all the time, every moment. I think in some ways, yes. So like when I went to high school, I went to high school to a private school that was different from the one that I had made my dear friends in elementary school. So I still had friends in the neighborhood, but I think by high school, when I was at this, independent private school, I had very few humans that I liked. It was or at least peers that I liked there, and it was just not a good match for me. Like it was a very like athletic, like preppy driven school at that point, and it was really I was really unhappy there. I don't know how much of it was just like regular old teen angst, and I would have been unhappy anywhere, but like there was definitely a component of it that was situational, and there were a bunch of jerks that I kind of had to spend much of my waking weekdays with. And so in some ways I think that did kind of like provide sort of a rebellious, sort of like angry spark. I mean, I know it sounds like babyish to complain about it because it's just like, yeah, there are jerks everywhere, you got to find your people.
Yeah.
But I do think that that probably helped kind of encourage that feeling. But at the same time, it's like The Clash and Minor Threat, I thought and think, are amazing regardless of how rebellious or anything that I was at a certain point in my life or now or whatever. So I think that it doesn't to me feel like it's unidimensional as being just like angry. Granted, there's a lot of music that I think is great because it is angry, but I think that like not just having anger be the sort of like theme of a particular type of music like is probably going to wear itself out pretty soon. So I feel like I can vouch for, and maybe not articulately at this moment, but like I think that I can vouch for why The Clash are great and why Minor Threat discography is great. And even though those were things that I was into when I was whatever years old.
How did that lead you into? Well, I mean, you already said Minor Threat and The Clash and all that. Like, so how old were you when you started getting to them, and like how did that lead you into like the like kind of the 90s style of punk rock?
So I think probably what happened was I got in probably through a metal-ish route.
Nice.
Like I loved the And Justice for All era Metallica. I loved Anthrax. I think I liked Anthrax more, not necessarily for their music as much as they had written a couple songs which I thought were, that were really like anti-racist, but that at the same time had like things that now you look at it and you're like, oh, that's totally like caricaturizing an entire group of people. But like,
Yeah.
it felt like they were like good-hearted, and I remember like loving that and just being like, oh, this is awesome. This is sort of my people, and they're smart, and they're not like
The dicks from high school.
yeah, and I think that was sort of like empowering in a way. So I think that kind of like naturally kind of fed into some avenues of punk rock that, I think that like to just sort of describe punk rock as like this, yes, angry, but also like this weird mix of like being angry with the people who deserve it, but also celebrating the lovely people that there are and treating people with respect who deserve it. So I think that kind of naturally pushed me into that. And then I think just by like, I kind of like reconnected with those friends that I had grown up with in the neighborhood. I think that like back at that time that you had to be really active. And I know this sounds like old, grouchy, get off my lawn. I had to walk to the record store, in 10 feet of snow and all that kind of stuff. But like, you really did have to like actively seek out what new records you were interested in. And like, I think that was like kind of our all full time, like that's what we were into. And so kind of like looking at a Maximum Rock and Roll issue and looking through the ads and reading, like pouring through the reviews and looking through bands' records and their thank you lists and being like, oh, I wonder what band this, oh, I wonder what band the t-shirt of, this band is sporting. So like, oh, I wonder what they're like. So, I think in that sense, like it's kind of just getting into it. And then I think that combined getting into bands like Minor Threat and sort of seeing how the whole Discord record and DC sort of scene operated in this way that was really self-reliant and I think was really empowering to sort of and to see and meet people who were doing like DIY shows and putting out DIY records, as young kids. It's like, that's awesome because especially to us sort of feeling, I don't know how alienated we really honestly were, but like that feeling of it and being able to kind of translate that into, hey, we can do this ourselves. If we want to put out, like, let's do it. And I think that's something that was really exciting for all of us to be able to like to make things. And so I don't think I don't even where is everything?
Real quick, I don't think I've ever asked this and it kind of popped in my head and I remember this happening a lot. Did you ever have, we would all, pretty much everyone I've interviewed, they always talked about exactly what you said of how they found bands, and the thank you list was the biggest one. Did you ever remember one album that you bought from the thank you list and you were like, this is a giant piece of shit?
It
happened a lot, but there has to be one where you're like, you don't have to like go like heavy into it and describe it. You just be like, there was just this album and I got it. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. I guess this wasn't thanks list sort of like, but I remember loving like the Uniform Choice record Screaming for Change, which is like a straight edge hardcore, like, but really anthemic songs and like, was great. And I think I probably got into it several years after that band had even existed and then not existed anymore. And I remember like the singer had gone on into some like band that I guess the name kind of says it, called Mind Funk. And I remember like buying that and then just being like, what? Like, what? And I think back then, like, now, I mean, I don't know if anyone, I mean, I try and support music that I feel like is worth supporting. But I think that then, like, you couldn't help but ending up with like a bunch of crappy records if you were into records. Like, you just didn't have the preview medium that you have now. So like, I remember I'm pretty sure I bought the Sugar Cubes, Life's Too Good solely because the record had like bright colors on it. And I remember listening to that later and just being like, whoa, this is not for me. And I know people like the Sugar Cubes and I'm sure it is great. And if I had more refined taste, I would like them too, I'm sure. But I remember buying and then just being like, why did I buy it? And I'm trying to think because I know there are so many. The ones that come to my head are like, I remember there was one called Rest in Pieces, which I think was like the drummer of Sick of It All thing, and getting that and being like, wow, that's awful. But I mean, like, there's a huge list. I wish I had a.
But you know why though? I think it was actually real quick. There's like a. Are you playing with like a pen or something in the background?
Sorry, nope,
It's
it was a
okay.
binder clip.
Okay, yeah. Well, just I know that'll pick up. That's what I figure out. Like,
Nope.
have some.
Yes, thank you, and sorry.
Do you know why I think that it probably pissed people off? It's because we were in high school.
By playing with the binder clip, or
Because you were playing with your binder clip now. What's really pissed off? They're like, what the fuck's wrong with the guy? What I think really made people mad is that we were in high school, we had no money, but we would take the money we had and spend it on something, and it was a gamble. And we're like, I hope this is good because I only
Mhm.
have $7 or
Yeah,
$10, and it's got to get me, like I said many times, it's got to get me this and then Taco Bell afterwards or
yep,
some kind of fast food that I need to have or
uh-huh,
whatever at the mall. And when you got it, and those times where you were right, you're like, thank this is great. And the times you were wrong, you're like, God damn it. And then you had to bring it back and trade it in and they gave you like $2. You're like, but I paid 12. Like,
yep.
what the hell, man? Yeah. I think for me, I don't know, I'm just gonna be really quick. I think Nerf Herder was that for me, but it was my friends who bought it, but they liked it, and I was like, I fucking hate this band.
Oh, really?
I couldn't stand that band at all. And I know people love them and they're fun, but I was just like, I can't deal with this fucking band.
Yeah, I
Something
remember.
about
I've
it.
heard of them, and I remember. I think I heard an interview with one of the guys at some point, but I actually have never. That's one of those bands that I had like have heard of, but
Never
never
listened to.
actually listened to. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I like them now, but I was not a fan. So how did all of this lead to you? You know, did you say that you had played in a band prior to starting Adam and his Package, or
Yes.
okay?
So like that same sort of crew of folks, in high school who I'd grown up with around the neighborhood. Like I said, like it was a very sort of incestuous group of bands in that people would be in a band for a while, they'd break up, they'd shuffle around, and people would get annoyed with each other and then love each other. And at some point, I think probably in 10th grade, maybe, I played in a band called Fracture, which was like with some of my closest friends. We also had like a sort of sibling band in our friends were in a band called Franklin, and each of these bands sort of like existed for a while, a couple, at least I don't know. Franklin existed for a very long time, but
Yeah, that name sounds really familiar.
yeah, but our band like existed maybe like 5 years. I played guitar in that and yelped a little bit in the background. We went on a couple tours and played to probably less than a couple people on those two tours in all, but it was super, super, super fun. It's like there's that sort of camaraderie that comes with, being in a band with your best friends. You kind of feel like this, like, oh, it's us against the world,
Yeah.
even when the world didn't really care about us.
So you actually had touring experience prior to starting your own thing.
Yeah, the bass player of Franklin, whose name was Roy, and we had set up a couple tours for Fracture and Franklin together. And so during that time, like, it was, I picked up the binder clip again. I'm
Put
putting it
it
away.
down, Adam.
I'm sorry. So we had like Maximum Rock and Roll during that time they did like once a year put out like this book called Book Your Own Fucking Life, and it had like DIY stuff all around the world of like different places, people who put on shows, like people who put out records, and it was just like a huge organizer for us. So we had set up a couple tours like during the summers for our bands together. And so Roy and I had done that, and we did that like by payphones because that was the time where like you had to pay, extra for long distance. So we had like Roy had some contraption where you could get free long distance calls from payphones, and so we had kind of booked the tours that way.
The dialer, is that what it's called?
Yep.
Yeah, a bunch of people have talked about that. Yeah. It's like so funny. I think like the punk rock starter kit was a dialer, book your own fucking life, a shitty van, and some just instruments. And you're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
we had
that's all we
we
need.
had all of the above.
Was there something to seeing Book Your Own Fucking Life where it kind of gave you that bridge where there was, I want to play music and tour, I don't know how to, and then all of a sudden it showed up in your face and you were like, oh my God, we can make this a reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think probably the first thing that maybe have opened our eyes to that was so our whole sort of gang, not gang,
All
our
right,
gang
talk about that.
of friends lived out in the suburbs, but some folks who were maybe a couple years older than us started this collectively run group called the Cabbage Collective in downtown Philadelphia, and they would like rent out the space, and there were a couple churches that would let them rent out space in their all-purpose room, and they would book shows. So like we would go down and see like hardcore bands like Born Against or Rorschach, who we loved, and and there were a lot of sort of like local. So I think that was just sort of the like book your own life and things like that were, yeah, they were kind of just like different versions of that or branches in terms of what we saw. And that, so, but I think like probably the first step was seeing these shows like that were, that kids who may have been a year or two older than us, like were setting up, and that touring bands would come and play at these, basements of churches. And so we would go to the shows. And I think that like, as you would do that more and more, it also becomes like a social thing, and you meet bands who are coming through and they'll trade and be like, oh, I do shows in Greensboro, North Carolina. And you're like, oh, great. Well, let's trade fax machine numbers or however we communicated then. Yeah. So I think that's how it worked. And then, yeah, I think that it was just like personality driven, that like Roy and I were and are like incredibly compulsive people. I think that like just by like brute force taking, every night that summer, just like we're calling everybody, we'll set out sort of a route. We're going to keep calling. We're going to keep calling. We're going to keep calling. And then we managed to sort of like cobble together, a couple tours. And again, I wouldn't say that they were productive tours if one kind of considered playing for people to be the productive part of a tour, but like we loved it. We had a blast. And it's like, what better way is there to see this huge, incredibly like diverse country than driving around like idiots with your best friends? And so it was great. I'd say that was that whole sort of introduction to punk rock and DIY punk stuff was incredibly empowering to a young kid to be able to go and do these things.
So you guys did this from 91 to 95?
The band Fracture or touring?
Fracture.
Yeah, from like 90. Yeah, definitely by 91, because I think we put out a record in 91, like a 7-inch, and then so probably around 90 to 95.
So that's just crazy, because I always talk about how when the scene had presented itself to me, or I found it, was in 96, 97, and that's where it really started to boom. So just to hear of people who, and I've talked to people before that they were playing music prior to like 95, 96, 97. So you did 4 years of touring.
Oh, but we didn't. We had gone on 2 tours over that time. Like we were like,
I was like, damn,
a band, and we practiced like all the time as much as we could. The amount of shows first of outside of touring was probably not a ton, and those were just 2 summer tours. And I would say like for the most part we would play a show here or there, probably not much outside the like 12-mile radius of Philadelphia.
Yeah, but what people don't understand is that, like you said before, is that even you can get a digital sample of a record now and then choose to buy it if you actually buy shit. And if you are buying, I'm sure, buying stuff on vinyl now is pretty awesome. But, you can just go on Spotify, listen to the whole thing. But back then, like none of this existed. It was CDs, and that's when CDs were starting to boom. And there was, I think, no bands were really putting tapes out, I think, then. Or there was 7 inches in CDs, really. Yeah.
Some.
It was like 7 inches CDs, but to go anywhere, like you said, you had to call people or fax them and call from a payphone with a dialer or your own money, and then show up hopefully, and people were there, and then all you had were paper flyers around town. It wasn't a Facebook ad or an Instagram digital, just a quick upload, and X thousands of people see it and decide if they want to come. So it's just. And again, the people listening to this, they all remember that they were from that time. And I don't think I have any really younger listeners who are going, that sounds scary
Yeah.
and insane. But you did this,
Yeah.
and then so you did that, and then like what led to the band breaking up and then you starting your own thing?
So first, I must say I don't think I ever faxed anybody to communicate with them. Um, but
I'm sure you
what
did.
happened? So we're dear friends. Our singer, he ended up moving to Washington State with his girlfriend at the time, who became his wife. And so they moved across the country, and we were all just like, oh, I mean, we adore him. So that essentially like was kind of like the decision made for us. I was like, okay, well, that's done.
The end.
And I think like after that, I tried to find a couple people to play with and did a couple little things, but like it just wasn't working. But I still like wanted to write and play music. And a friend of a friend, a guy named Andrew Dick, he had written a couple songs on a music sequencer and recorded them on a 4-track. And the music sequencer is kind of like a very, very, very primitive version of the kind of self-contained garage band. You couldn't record vocals or anything from outside on it, but it was kind of like a synthesizer kind of mixed in this little box where you could overdub different instrument sounds. I had gotten one because I was like, oh my gosh, that's so fun. And, I would just write songs for friends, whether it was on their birthday or just like
that's funny.
Dumb songs that I would just record them on my 4-track. And, it was actually a 3-track because I think one of the microphone inputs didn't work, but I only needed 3 tracks. So, I think I made a demo tape, and then my dear friends who are still in this band, Franklin, they outlived Fracture by a long time. I would travel with them just to hang out when they would go and play shows. Every once in a while, I would just play before them as Adamanta's package, and just plug the sequencer into their bass amp, which I remember the first time I plugged it into the piano. I'm like, oh, that actually sounds like the songs rather than just like. So I think that's how it started. I didn't intend for it to actually be a thing, but then it kind of was really fun to do. And binder clip, get
back.
Ugh, I forget. Was that the question?
No, but what led to you leaving the band and starting Adam's package? But that pretty much summed it up.
That was it, and it was just kind of I loved it. I would spend all night cackling and giggling and making these songs, and it was just that's what I wanted to do with my spare time initially.
That's hilarious. I love that you there's certain things that I've noticed with myself that if I feel I'm kind of I really love creating, I constantly need to create. There's just this thing in me that I just have to do it. This podcast is one of them, and they said, the comic, and and sometimes I feel a little stagnant, and then this tool or thing is presented to me, and my mind explodes with all of the things that I can do, because it's like opening Pandora's box. So it kind of sounds like when you got this box, you had toured, you'd played music, and you played guitar in the band, right? In Fracture?
Yes, and yelped a little bit in the background.
And yelped a little bit. So you had a little bit of vocal practice there.
That's generous.
But then you're the band breaks up and you're like, crap, I really want to do this. And all of a sudden, things aren't working out with practicing with other people. And it's your brain's going how am I going to do this? And all of a sudden this thing is in front of you going, oh my God, I don't have to have other people around. And you're just kind of poking at it and you're like, oh, I can make little beats and things like that. And then you're making joking songs for your friends, which I love doing that. Or not making that for my friends, but even just making up songs when we're around friends that are just 10 seconds long, or I'm just singing some random shit of what's happening. I just find it to be so funny because I'm making myself laugh. And you did that, you got the box, oh, I'll just make birthday songs, and then, oh, I can jump on a show and just have this and play. Is that how you felt? Was there a freedom to that? Oh my God, I can keep doing this and I just need
totally.
me.
I mean, I think that I think totally that makes sense. And that, I feel as I got older, eventually, I feel obviously you change as you get older. And I think that there's probably a reason why few bands can sort of sustain and definitely like kind of like quality of what they did. There are a few bands that can kind of like maintain awesomeness.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say anything that I've ever done ever in anything is awesomeness, but like I think at that point, as being that young, like I really that describes it pretty well. What you were saying, that like it was the sort of like gushing of stuff, like that's what I wanted to do. And now I think like I couldn't, I don't, and I don't know if it's the same with you, but like getting like I just don't have the drive to do it in that way at this point, and I haven't for a while.
Interesting. Well, I kind of luck out because I've worked for myself for since like 2006. I've done freelance, so I have
What do you do?
to. I do freelance graphic design and
Oh
animation.
wow, oh that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun, but I don't like where I'm finding that my drive is. That's why I started like exactly why I started the podcast, because I felt that I didn't have a drive to create something. And I was like, well, I don't want to make music anymore because I just don't. I'll pick up my guitar and play it in my apartment. I'm like, I could try to get on a local show, but I'm like, I just don't want to. I don't care. But this was kind
Yeah.
of like my new way of making music that wasn't
Uh-huh.
work.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's like a parallel. So I totally know what you mean, where you're kind of like, you almost feel that it's your identity to do that one thing that you did, but you're like, yeah, but I don't want to like go and do that at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night on a Tuesday.
Yeah,
Or
and I mean, I think that when I stopped at definitely the right time, like I stopped touring when it felt like, oh, you know what, this is
is a
this does
chore.
not feel genuine anymore. Exactly. So I think that makes sense that that's going to happen for something that you do over and over and over again.
Yeah, but before all that though, because I mean, I'm looking through Wikipedia and your website. You did a lot. You had a lot of albums and EPs, and we're on.
Yeah,
I mean, I forgot you're on Hopeless too.
I loved doing it. Like, no question. Like
But
that
let's
I.
but let's talk about when you started doing, because this is like where you get to really reminisce, and let's talk about. So you play that show, you figure out plugging the box, into the PA sounds better.
So, yeah, so now it took me a very long time to recognize that or know anything about how sound at a show worked. But I played for a while, just doing it like for like 10 minutes before Franklin would play somewhere. And like even when it stunk and like everybody hated it, like there's kind of fun in that too. I mean, I always felt like there was kind of a playfully obnoxious component of it. So that was when it stunk and when it was awful was kind of fun too.
Well, but like, how did it feel? So you were, because when you're on stage with a band, you can kind of mesh in with everyone else around, like sound wise and just physically. You're
Hmm.
sharing a stage. You getting up there and doing this, it's you with a microphone, and the box, like the music generator, is just on the side. So obviously that's not going to be a member that's with you by any
Right.
mean in any sense. It's just you with a microphone or you with a guitar. It's standing there in a Legion Hall where kids are just kind of making a U around you, and there's no drummer behind you, there's no guitarist or
Hmm.
bass player to your left or right. So like, how did you feel when you first got up there and were by yourself?
I think it was fun. Like I mean, I felt very comfortable, sort of like in punk rock land and in punk rock shows, and kind of loved being at those shows at that time. And so I think that there was sort of like this feeling of comfort and having fun with it. And
Is it because, I hate to cut you off, but it was because you just felt like it wasn't forced?
it was definitely not forced, and it definitely was like there was no pretension about it, that it was just
Mhm.
like whatever, like here are some dorky songs I wrote for my friend, like hey, let's have fun. I mean, there were definitely times where like no one cared either way. There were definitely times where people were like, this is the worst and I hate you. And but like even during those times, like my feeling about it was pretty not to have it wedded to like my self-worth, that it was just like, okay, whatever, like this, okay, maybe I can be obnoxious enough that it's still fun for me and some other people. And I don't know if that's the nicest thing to do, but like even when it went poorly, it went well. because it was fun.
It was just because you were kind of just making yourself amused almost.
Yeah, and I mean, I think similar to like when I described like when you're on tour with your friends, you kind of have this like feeling of like your friends against the world. I don't think I did it at people's expense, hopefully not often or at all maybe, but like I think that there is this sense of like when you have this group of friends that but like I guess you could kind of think of like the whole punk rock scene at that point, that there are definitely sort of times where it feels, and this was something that I thought was really really amazing about the Chris Gethard show, that when I went up there and played was it was that kind of feeling of like everyone in this room, I may not know everybody, but everyone in this room I kind of love and could kind of be friends with everybody here. And I feel like that there were some great punk rock, shows where that's the case. And like when you have this feeling of like, okay, it's us together, and maybe some indignation about something unfair in the world, like that can be a really nice feeling for a lot of people.
I liked watching you play on the Gethard show because I think Joe Polito, he has this website called NJPB Archives, where it's basically he uploaded every demo tape from every band from back then on this website. It's crazy. And he hit me up on Facebook. He sends me the link after the Gethard interview, and he goes, "Check this out." And it's the video of him introducing you on his show, and you're playing, and you just see the crowd's faces. They're smiling like they're so happy
that's nice
to be there, and it was just so cool looking at it. And like you looked super stoked, but like I can imagine how nerve-wracking that must have been, just to be like, wow, this is a big thing.
It didn't feel nerve-wracking for that reason, I don't think, because again, like it just didn't matter if it went well or not, and what could have possibly happened if it totally stunk and people were like, this is awful. Then that's embarrassing, and it's I'm glad it didn't do that, but like I don't know. It doesn't. I wasn't worried about it like that. I think I was more worried and kind of felt at the time like there was a part of it that really felt, and definitely towards the end of my doing it, where it felt like I was not being genuine in doing it. That I didn't have the same sort of excitement that I felt like I had for a long time at the beginning. And going back, it is so flattering and so like touching that anyone cares about it at all, that you're contacting me and that anyone cares about any of this is so nice to hear. Like I played I don't play very often. I played a show at the fest in Florida because that's where I live.
You went down the street, you're like, oh, it's a local show, let me stop by.
I do not live in Florida. But I played, and there was a part of me that's like this. It felt like there's obviously not much change to the actual songs. Part of me like feels like I'm saying the same intro, and whether or not the people here have seen it, like it feels like it felt a little stale and awkward. Like it felt like I wasn't doing it like there wasn't the genuine set of excitement, even though like it's so nice that people care. I don't know.
Well, so you kind of like, so when you played, because you played Fest twice, you played in 2013 and 16. Did I read that right?
I would say I played twice. I don't know what the 2016 sounds right.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just like reading what's on Wikipedia. It's like my reference.
I have no reason to doubt it.
I think I might be wrong with the 2013, but I did see that you played it twice, which I thought was cool. I mean, Fest is kind of like nowadays, I think that's the thing to play. It's kind of like the what's the word? I don't say North Star. That sounds stupid, even though I said it. Kind of like the mecca of like festivals. It's like the true festival, I think, to play, because you have the other ones like Riot Fest, which has kind of gotten a little bit glammed out, which I still probably would have gone to it. Like Lollapalooza, Warped Tour, those are kind of shiny, commercial, but I think Fest is you show up and I just feel like everyone there is just wearing like dirty punk rock shirts. Everyone has beards and they're just constantly drinking like canned beer that's shitty and just walking around and super happy and talking about vinyl.
It is. I have, every time I've gone to it, those feelings like resonate with me. Like it feels like an expanded version of what I described about the Chris Gethard show, where it's just like, oh my gosh, like that. Yeah, I love it, and it's a really nice warm group of folks.
2008 is when you played the first one. That was when you played Fest 7. Yes, I was reading that wrong. And then, okay. Yeah, oops, whatever. My bad. Okay, so tell me about. I'll be conscious of your time too, but I never asked the question how you came up with the name, but how did you come up with the idea of saying "and his package"? Like, was there obviously a joke in that, or did you do that and someone was like, haha, you're like, oh shit, I didn't realize I made that
No,
kind of
I
reference.
definitely realized. I mean, when I first started doing it,
When you said it to your mom, she's like, Adam, you're like, oh shit.
I mean, like, I am lucky enough to kind of come from a background where, like, I mean, my folks have always been like, and I mean, to a point where it's probably ridiculous, like to their children and their grandchildren, oh, everything you do is the best, and that's amazing to have cheerleaders like that.
That's
So,
nice.
but when I sort of like did the first demo or played the first couple shows, like it was not intending to be a band. So I think when I was printing out like what the insert for the tape demo would be, it was seriously like a 45-second decision where I was like, oh, get it? That's funny because, for
Adult reasons.
yeah, and like exactly for all the like that's what I decided in those 45 seconds. It was, I would say, a bad decision. I would say that it is a very dumb name. But again, like whatever. Yes, there are better names that could be chosen.
Yeah, but I think that, like, think of like Jimmy Eat World. That's an awful fucking band name. But the music that they made was so great that it just became, oh, Jimmy Eat World. Like, I think
Right.
sometimes a name after it's just said over and over again, or you see it, you don't pick it apart like you initially did. It just becomes a thing. So I think when I say Adam's package, like the joke, it takes,
Yeah.
when I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It could be
It is
like
a
an
series of letters. Oh, it is really, really dumb. But yeah, no, you're totally right.
But it encompassed the sound that you made, so it became one whole thing where it was all together, where you just dismissed that, like, oh yeah, like
Well, that's
penis joke.
good. But I think that it makes sense because it's just like, what is a band name other than just like a way of sorting and being like, Cannibal Corpse represents this band? Like,
Right.
eventually it does just become a name, and it's just like, oh, that's the thing. That is the string of letters or sounds that describes this group of people. It's really just a label of it rather than,
Yeah.
after time.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Google, Amazon, all
Yeah.
that, like Uber. I mean, obviously I go completely corporate there, but it just becomes a thing. So,
Yeah.
but okay, you start playing shows. When did you start to realize that, oh, I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna make this into a thing and go for it.
So I think when I graduated from college, I did like a 1-year program in Philadelphia to get certified to teach high school and get like a degree in education. My student teaching year that year was really, really rough. I taught at a school which has since been closed, and it was just really, it was a really rough stretch. I was teaching at a school where the kids absolutely did not have a fair opportunity, regardless of how motivated they were, regardless of how much work they did. Like a lot of kids there, they were at such an incredible disadvantage. And so it was a really depressing, like sad, tough year. And I remember at the end of it that I was just like, I can't do this. And so I knew I was not going to be able to go into teaching at that point. And I think while I was trying to like figure out what the heck am I doing, I think I set up, am I making this up? No, I worked at like a coffee roasting place for a little while and smelled very good.
Nice.
Then I had set up a tour for Franklin and another friend's band, and Jordan and I play. Oh wait, I don't know. I'm probably mixing up dates and stuff and humans and things like that. But after that, where I was just like, I can't teach right now, and I like set up a tour. Maybe it was just by myself, like to go down to like Boston or go into Boston and back. It worked enough, and it's so much easier when it's like one person that you have to feed and pay rent for rather than a ton. And also I was able to play whenever the heck I wanted. I didn't have to coordinate 4 or 5 people's schedule. So I think it just started after that when I realized like, I cannot teach right now. And then it somehow worked enough that I was able to support myself off of it, and just kept, every time I'd get home, I would book more shows and go out and book more shows and go out again, and just kept doing it.
Did you practice by yourself?
No, I think that the practice kind of came in the songwriting and the recording, like because you're doing each track, and like in recording, just like you're just doing it to the point where it's seared into your brain. So I think that like the whole writing process and recording it is kind of the practice.
Because just like imagining you just being in your apartment and just being like, all right, it's 7 o'clock, it's band practice time. Just put
And
on the machine and go.
just like something that you love to do, if you love to do it, you're gonna do it. And I do think that like kind of in that way that the songwriting and recording was the practice.
How did you choose your set list? Like when you just had a couple releases, like how did you, so okay, well this is the order of the EP or just the demos that I have. Did you think of it as being in a band where you kind of mix them around, or just kind of follow them one through 10?
Oh, no, I definitely mixed them around and made it so that it felt like it made sense. I mean, sometimes I would just do whatever I felt like doing at that time, and that there wasn't a set list. But like then I just think like anything, that you kind of like see what works, and that there are songs that you like playing more than other songs. Yeah, it felt band like in that way.
How did you do your merch? Did you, because it seems like you were insanely DIY with your website, which I do want to talk about a couple of these links, by the way,
Oh yeah.
especially the hate mail part. I'm very intrigued by this. Did you make your own merch?
Yeah, I mean, I did not like
Screen print it?
the cotton and stuff like that.
I had a cotton field in my backyard that would just
Yeah,
like go from farm to printed shirt.
I think one of the places I played, I'd set up tours for, yeah, with a fracture actually. Um, the guys who had set up the show, they had run this like music hall, but in the back of the music hall had a screen printing place. The place was called Tremont Music Hall. It's somewhere in North Carolina. I think it
Oh,
was
I never
in,
heard of that.
where was that?
It's like Greensboro?
That's what I'm thinking, but now I'm thinking like, why would it have been Greensboro? Because maybe it was Greensboro.
I think I've heard of that before. I mean, I could easily Google it, but I'm just being lazy right now.
There was a guy who did Contagious graphics out of there, and this was,
I remember
does that
that.
still
Yeah.
exist?
I don't know. Let me actually look that up. Let me see graphics. Yeah, because you get stickers from there. Yep, they still got it. Wow,
Yeah,
they're still around. Yeah, screen printing
awesome.
since 1998. Holy shit.
I presume that they probably are still living off the 290 shirts that I printed in
Probably that catapulted them.
1988. Yeah.
They kept... Wait, so you knew them right in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I booked shows, I think for Fracture and Franklin through them. Where are they based? Was it in Greensboro? I don't think so, because there was this punk rock house that we played at on Dick Street in Greensboro.
Charlotte.
And oh, it's Charlotte.
Yeah,
That makes
Charlotte. Because
sense.
I looked up their area code from their phone number. They're in Charlotte. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Oh wow.
So that makes sense. But so yeah, I mean, I would essentially just like order a bunch of shirts and get the like no one, we didn't have like royalties or anything at that point. Like all the people aside from the first one like I put out records with were like people I was friendly with. I would say like when I put out some records with Hopeless Records, like that was the first sort of relationship that I was not friends initially. Like they're wonderful people, but like it wasn't just friends who were. So prior to that, it was just like people I knew, and then they would just like give you a percentage of the pressing of records and stuff to sell and do whatever the hell you wanted with. Um, so I guess there were stickers and shirts that I made through Contagious Graphics, and then I would just pick up, records or purchase them through wholesale through the record labels that put them out, carry them around in this huge Tupperware container, and get to the shows, set up the, merch table thing, and play, and then go back there and sell it. I would.
You would set it up, leave it there, and go play like unattended, or would you just like hit up the merch person next to be like, "Hey, can you just like watch this while I go
No, I
play?"
think most of the shows were like punk rock shows, and I think it was just like, what? Is someone gonna take like? Who's gonna take this? Like, and maybe some people did, but like, no, for the most part, it was fine. Like,
Someone listening's probably like looking at their Adam in his package shirt that they stole. They're thinking, "I'm an asshole."
they have made a car out of the Adam and his package shirts. And I think that, but also like there were times where I was on tour, like a friend would come with me, or I'd be on tour with another band, and so like I'm sure they would keep an eye on it. I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's how it worked. And then I would, as I would get low and stuff, I'd order more and have it shipped to me somewhere along on tour. And
Who did your artwork for like any of your merch and your albums?
initially, I think I tried to do the artwork, but I'm, as may be clear, like not so great at that. Like the artwork on the records was done by different people. Like a friend of mine who put out a society of people named Elihu record. He knew enough about Photoshop and
Illustrator,
whatever
and InDesign and Quark.
I forget, Illustrator, yeah, that stuff. So he took care of that. I think like the folks at Contagious Graphics for some of the things, like I was like, I want this ruler thing, and I wanted to say, go metric now. I think that they kind of like designed it, or I made like the Punk Rock Academy sticker. And I think like the first iteration was probably like illegible and looked horrible. And I think the guy, actually, his name was Steve Munsell, who ran Contagious Graphics at that time, and I think what happened was, I think I ordered them, and one time they showed up and they just looked good. Like the letters were like the appropriate sizes, and I think that I was just like, oh, that's cool, thank you. Like, but I think they were probably like, oh my god, what is wrong with this person? They look horrible. So then eventually, I met a friend who I had always stayed with when I went to Tampa. His name's Chris Norris, and he was in a bunch of bands from Tampa, like a band called Reversal of Man. That was a sort of like screamy hardcore band, and one called Combat Wounded Veteran. Like but he was like a super like funny, dark humored guy, and I would always stay with him, and we'd always like watch horror movies when I would come down there, and was just like a good, interesting, funny, but also like did this artwork that is like that face on the front page of like the website is like his thing. Like if you look up some of like the Combat Wounded Veteran artwork, it's like really like retina searing colors that are just like grotesque but also like comic-y at the same time.
On your albums?
Well, and he ended up doing the last couple records of that, but also the artwork that he did for his own band is even more awesome, and like just like gory but also like funny at the same time too, and just like over the top and ridiculous. And so I really loved his artwork and really thought it was awesome, and he was down for doing it. And so I think then later he ended up designing some of the shirts, and I used his artwork.
I think it makes sense though, like looking at the design, even though you said your own artwork, that the face on the top of your website is just so hilarious. Like the beginning of the website where you're just rolling over it and these just random colors come on it. Like
I think I put the random colors on it. I think because I think after my HTML training 2.0 probably was like, oh, you can do it.
You do a switch image.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I did that on the other page too, and I remember thinking like, this looks awesome.
So here's the thing. So from being in graphic design, like I wouldn't say I'm snobbish, but I pick myself up.
You want to hire me?
Yeah, I wouldn't hire you. No, but I pick myself apart about the things that I do, where other people would look at it and be like, "That looks good," and like I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not pushing the boundaries, or it's not like it feels too safe." And I see other artwork out there where I'm like, and I even said to like clients sometimes, I'm like, "This is gross. Like, what the fuck is this?" And because it doesn't, the thing with art or design is it has to match it has to tell the story of like what you're seeing, like what it's representing. And what I love about the website, even though it's like, yeah, it's a design nightmare, but it's perfect because it represents someone who just had fun with it. And that's what I
Yeah.
love about it, and I think it makes complete sense. So when I see things like that, and I see like that picture of like that crazy scary thing on your front page, I think it's hilarious because I'm like, oh my God, this is representing an experience I'm gonna have, and I think it fits so perfectly. So the same thing with like the album artwork, and I'm on eBay right now trying to look up shirts that are people are selling of yours that, and just trying to see the designs, which there are. Actually,
Really?
it's more. These are more CDs. Oh, there. Yep, there's one. It's like the guy. It's from Redefining Music. It's got like the green guy and the ER mask or whatever. It's from the album.
Um, I'm gonna pull it up. I'm interested. Oh, I see Adam in his package punk T-shirt.
Yeah.
Oh, this is not. This is a bootleg shirt.
Oh.
Orange one.
Interesting.
That's a snazzy looking shirt too. I like
Oh,
that.
that's some interesting stuff there. That's some bullshit then. Someone's making some money from Canada.
That is very weird. I mean, you'd have to be like, how many units do you think are being sold
You
of
can
this?
actually see on eBay, it'll show you how many have actually been sold. Because 5 available, 10 sold. Yep. Yeah. Someone made $200. Yeah, look at that.
Hey
So that's a
man.
bootleg. Yeah, but that's a bootleg of an album cover though.
Yeah. And that's Chris Norris's drawing. Like he did that artwork and I love that
Yeah, and
artwork.
like you can tell, did he also do attention blah blah blah? Blah. Yep.
Yep.
You could see it like where that style is, and I think it's great. I don't know. I think it's looking
Let
awesome.
me I'm gonna find and email you the combat or wounded. I'm sure this is not gonna take up good things. Or what will it bring? Oh, there it is. Oh, here's one. Look for combat wounded veteran. Duck down for the torso.
Down for the torso?
Yes,
Is that what you saw originally? You're like, you have to design this for me, my artwork for me.
I think that I think I had seen his earlier stuff, but I think that that one is a particularly like awesome one.
Combat wounded veteran. So yeah, if everyone listening, you should go Google that and look it up because it's pretty great. It's just this guy is like his limbs are just blown off him, but what's with like the one purple guy in the background with like the yellow spark around his head looking up? Is that-
I cannot begin to
Ah.
understand the absurdity of those. Now, just the name, I would say that's not people name
It's
things
not
poorly,
great.
not just me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, but I just felt like you had it was all kind of figured out where I was thinking it before when you were talking, like when you would get up on stage, it was kind of like everyone was doing the same thing, and you were kind of like a palate cleanse in the middle of a show or at the end of a show where you were like, this is so different. And then later on, like bands like I think like Reggie and the Full Effect had like a very synth sound that was like poppy and fun, and then there was like
Mhm.
that disco era punk thing that was kind of annoying with some of the bands that were doing because they were doing it poorly, just because I knew that people were liking it. But I felt like you stood out, especially one, you're by yourself and you had the synthesizer thing set up to the PA, and I think everyone watching you at the same time, it was fun, it was funny, and it was ballsy as shit because they're going, man, this guy's up there solo doing this, and I don't know, I just think people were like, wow, that's awesome.
Oh, well, some may have that, which is very nice. Some may have just been like, "What?"
Yeah, well, and then also there is this section on your website which I want to talk about. You have this whole hate mail section on the website where people would just send you this stuff. Like, this is awful. Is that like a
Yeah,
constant thing that you just get these emails from people spending that much time just to like say this shitty stuff?
yeah, enough that I was able to collect enough of it to make a page of him. But yeah, I think it was always surprising to me too that it was just like it's not like it was impossible to avoid. Like it's just like, huh? Like who cares? Like what? Who
Did that
cares?
become a little draining after a while?
The only times that it became draining were when it was like it wasn't just like you stink and this is stupid and you have no talent and suck. And the things where I think that like it got, too much was like there was one person who like emailed me like a thing like talking about like it was some sort of anti-Semitic like thing saying they were going to burn down my parents' house and this like just stuff like that where it's just like,
wow, that's fucking crazy.
yeah. So like as much as like at the time I'm like that's not going to happen. It still is like,
That's scary.
yeah, it's just like, oh, my parents didn't do anything. Like, and threatening to have anyone's house burned down for putting out like dumb songs, even if they're about black metal, like that's dumb. But that feels like those were acute sort of like instances. But the other ones, like kind of similar to like when the shows would go poorly, most of the time I was just like, oh well, whatever. Like who cares? Like this is fun and dorky, and I totally understood from the get-go that like this is not for everybody, and that some people might think it totally sucks, and that's fine. Like I think to me, like it didn't really bug me, and I think that it was just like funny for my friends and me when we would sit there and be like, someone just wrote a big, long handwritten letter, addressed it to the dumb PO box, and like,
handwritten, Jesus.
Oh yeah, and like people, there was someone took out like an ad in like paid money to do, and it was just like serious to my friends and me. It's like it didn't hurt my feelings. It was just like this is ridiculous.
That's insanity. God. Yeah, anyone who does that, I mean, the thing I've learned being older now, quote unquote, is just, when people have some really fucked up shit going on with themselves when they target other people like that. That's so insane.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think that like to a degree that's probably true, but I think also to a degree like the internet, and this was sort of like when the internet kind of took hold and was really widely available at that time. So I think that was like the beginning of this sort of inflated overconfidence over like bullying of kind of like nature, that's being able to talk to people and like be a jerk but without any accountability at all, or without the kind of the separation from even recognizing like, oh, that's a human on the other end of this,
without having your return address on an envelope that they was sent to you with hate.
Yeah, and I think that's still, I mean, if you look at the internet comment pages or on Twitter, it's just like, wow, are you that horrible as a like in person? And I think probably most of the time is probably not. I think that's just the nature of empowering people to say whatever they want with very little consequences.
Yeah, it's just that no one has the balls to say it to somebody's face, especially if it's like that aggressive. And if they do, it's super awkward. You're like, oh god, this is gonna be really awkward for everybody around hearing your stupid shit.
There is something that's just like laughable when you kind of like think of the scope of things in the world. And granted, like as a kid, I'm positive that I was a jerk to like people who didn't deserve it for like, and I'm sure at some point I was like, oh, that band's signed to this lit, like, meh, meh, meh. And I think like I can understand why, punk rock was really important to me at that time, and I still think it's a really lovely tool, but like, or not tool, but like thing. And I think that I understand sometimes why people do things and say things that you're just like, this is, in the grand scheme of things, like I would think that one would be hard pressed to really come up with a reason why, if you don't like someone's music that they make, like that should be the sort of thing that you raise and give someone a hard time about. It's like, oh my gosh, there's no shortage of horrible behavior in the world. There's no shortage of like people who are mean to other, like, it's just like that's the type of behavior that needs to be called out. I guess I'm retroactively talking to people who have probably long since grown up and probably would be like, oh, I can't believe I did that.
Sorry for being such a dick. You're like, it's fine. You should do a podcast where you just reach out to everyone who just sent you hate mail, and they're probably like, I'm so sorry. It's just like a virtual hug. You're like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
I was actually just a couple more questions. I'll let you go, but yeah. See, you had an article on Vice. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that was a very nice article with Dan Ozzy, bro. Yeah, I was very
That's fucking
flattered.
cool, dude. I mean, like you put out so many records, and so from like 90, when was it you started? 97, it's 96 to 2003,
96
and then
probably,
you ended in
yeah.
2003. I read because of a health issue.
Uh, Partially. I mean, like there was a week where there was a confluence of events that was just like, oh, I should probably figure out how to get health insurance. So like within 1 week I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. My wife and I found out we were having a baby. I was about to leave on like a 6 week European tour. I think that combined with kind of what I was describing before as being like, I there was a component of it that felt like I was going through the motions. Like I had played so much, I kind of felt like when I would introduce songs that I would be like, I'm just saying the same thing every single night. And even if like it was new people, a part that I felt like was an asset to doing it was like if I'm present and interacting with the people who are there, then that made it fun each time. But I felt like after a while I'd done it so much that it felt like I was doing like a monologue of the whole show rather than interacting with the people who were there. And I felt like I could talk through the show and the banter while thinking about other stuff completely. And I just felt like that's it just felt not great.
Yeah.
So I think it was sort of all that stuff combined. It was definitely it was the right
Was
time to
this your
stop.
full-time gig? Like, were you working outside of this?
No, for the I mean like for no for those 6 7 years or whatever. No, that was the full time thing.
Wow, that's so cool,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, it was awesome. I got to meet some really wonderful people.
What was like the biggest tour you went on? Like, or okay, well, two part. Maybe it's the same part. Biggest tour, and was it also a tour where you got to be on like a tour bus the whole time instead of having to drive by yourself?
So biggest tour, do you mean like longest or furthest, or do you mean
Band-wise that you
like
were with.
I don't think I ever went on like a big
Oh, really?
tour.
No, you were the big tour.
Oh yeah, I was enormous. No, I went on tour with like friends bands usually and just like yeah, no, I don't think I went on just with like friends but no one huge. No, definitely never had a tour bus. Usually my mom's car. She was very very kind enough to lend it to me a lot.
So you would basically the majority of the tours you'd be solo and just driving these long ass distances by yourself.
Yeah, a lot of them. I mean, sometimes I would be able to convince friends to come with me. Sometimes when I was in Europe, I did not do the driving. A friend of mine booked tours in Europe, and like when I would go abroad, aside from Canada, the people who arrange the shows would also arrange transportation and stuff. The usual like U.S. sort of show, yeah, I would kind of hopefully have friends come with me. At one time, I did a tour with my friend Sean, who does this thing called Harmar Superstar. It was just him and me in my mom's car, and that was
Wow.
fun. But yeah, no, no, no
That's so
buses.
crazy. I traveled around the country in 2015 by myself and I got used to the driving, but like
Just to go?
yeah, I like sold everything and just kind of needed to get away from New
Uh-huh.
Jersey. So I wouldn't drive all the time, but I would drive to a city, or like 3 weeks I would drive like maybe max 8 hours to get to some place and stay there for a couple days and go to another place. And it reminded me of being on
Oh,
tour. It was cool being alone because it was very just had a lot of time to think, which is what I
yeah.
needed. And I can imagine 6 years of doing that, you definitely had a lot of time to think.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Wow, that's cool. How did you land in Raleigh?
I passed through it right in the beginning. My buddy Tom, he used to go to shows back then. Actually, I'm gonna do a kind of a podcast thing with him for this. We were talking about it yesterday. He presented the
Uh-huh.
idea, but I was driving. I was putting on Facebook. I was like, "Hey, I'm selling everything. I'm gonna travel. I need a place to stay in North Carolina." He was like, "Oh, you should come to Raleigh." And I'd never been here. Stopped here. I was like, "I love it here." And I kept traveling. And
Oh,
yeah, I mean, I even lived in Austin for a month and Portland for 3 months. And
huh.
I just like this was like a nice mix of both. So I came back and got back to Jersey. Didn't have any place to live, And I was like, I'm just gonna not stay here anymore. So I came down here. So I've been here for 4 years in January. Yeah, it's cool. I love it.
And I mean, I find driving long distances to be kind of meditative and pleasant.
Yeah, I definitely now I'm kind of I've just been kind of hanging on Raleigh a lot. I haven't really driven that much. Plus, I got like a Jeep and it just kills gas. So I was like, yeah, I could walk everywhere in
Yeah,
downtown. So it's a lot better.
right.
Cool, man. So before we wrap this up, I asked two questions. But one of them,
Yeah.
what would you like to plug? And it could be anything that you have going on, or it could be something for a friend of yours that you want to give like shine a spotlight on.
Um, I have nothing going on. I haven't thought about it. I have nothing. I'm not hawking anything. There are bands that I like that I think
Sure.
other people should. There's a band called Future of the Left from Cardiff, Wales, and they are. I cannot believe that they have not ruled the galaxy. Some of their records are just like great, super awesome, noisy, snarky punk songs, but that are also totally infectious and catchy, but not in like a predictable way.
Hmm.
They're great.
Future, was it?
Future of the
Future of the
Left.
Left. Okay. So make sure, because I think some people won't rewind, so I want to make sure because they're listening to this on their phones, and hopefully they're not
Yeah.
they can just look it up on Spotify, right? Yeah. So when you're driving, when you're done with this, since this is going to be over in a second, everyone listening, you should just look it up on Spotify and check that out. Future of the Left. I'm actually.
I think they're great and appreciate.
All right. Last question is what I ask everybody. I want to end this. What punk or my God, I totally forgot it. What punk rock ethics or what scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
I mean, I I think that the sort of like scene ethics, and of course I'm not perfect, I'm a human, but I think that the ethics of trying to treat people with respect and acknowledging that people are humans, trying to find the courage to speak up when things aren't fair, that I think that if you could kind of summarize how it was supposed to go was like empowering of people, that people can do things. Also, just that life is not fair and that some of the stuff is not negotiable. So that I think that it's our job to kind of try and make it as fair as possible. And so I think that I try and sort of live that and hopefully sometimes get it right.